Hey guys, welcome back to the second episode of the developer course. So today we are going to take a look at server side and client side and what's the difference between the two. And we are going to launch our dev survey that we made last week. And after that, we are also going to create our first script. So we're going to write a manifest for that, and we'll take a look at some variables and some simple math and stuff like that. So let's jump straight into it. Okay, we are going to talk about what's the difference between server side and client side. So first off, at the every game server, FiveM server, has a physical server that hosts the game for everyone. This is the representation of that. So this is the server. And I notice now that you have issues seeing the text. So I'm going to move my camera just a little bit. Give me a second. And there we go. So this is the server. And we also have a client, okay? So how does this work? How do we communicate between the client and the server? Well, we are going to go into that eventually, but not right now. But the client is using events to communicate with the server, and the server using events to communicate with the client as well. So they have the client sends an event to the server, and the server can then respond back to the client. Now to the question, if you have two clients, how does these work and how do we make it so these clients can talk to one another? So if you have two clients like this, two clients right here, still just one server, it's always going to be just one server. Okay, guys? And we don't have any communication possible between two clients in FiveM. So basically, there is peer-to-peer, but FiveM is purely server-based. That's what we are going to be working with. And as a server-based communication, we can't communicate client to client. So how do we reach or communicate to another client? Yeah, first we send a message to the server, and we tell the server that, hey, we want to talk with this client. So the server sends a message to this client, and then the client, if the client wants to respond or anything, then he needs to send it back to the server, and the server sends it back to the clients. So these are the ways of communication between client and server. So let's say that we have this client. He is trying to shoot at this client, but he can't shoot directly at this client. So he will shoot at a specified location at the server. And the server will then ask either every client or just this specific client, like, are you in this position? And then it's going to respond, yeah, I'm in that position. And then the server can send the message back to the client like, hey, you hit him, good. So that is how the communication between the client and the server works. Okay, guys, I know you guys have been waiting for this, so let's jump into some coding, guys. So where will we start? We will start with taking this down, and we need to launch our server. So I already have a server set up that I'm going to be working at. It's this one. And I would also recommend you guys, actually, before we even launch the server, we need to do something else. We need to always start our exam on our machine and set up the Apache and MySQL, because that's our server database. And remember, if we press the admin right here on the MySQL, then we open up the PHP MyAdmin where we can check our databases and stuff like that. So you should have something that looks like this, Cubic Core Framework, when we created our server. And this is the database for your server. So you can go into that and you should have all of these tables. And just to make sure, we can also go into the folder where it's created. And right here, you should see a server config. We can open that. And if you take a look at that, you should be able to see something like this. You are going to have a license key, but I removed mine. But it's going to look something like this, and this is the database that you are going to be calling. It's not supposed to be called Cubicore, but I have another database that is called Cubicore as well that I will be using. But you will be called something like Cubicore Framework and something. So make sure you have that inside of the server config. And at the very bottom of your server config, I'd like you to add this command as well. What this does is it's open the server GUI. I'll show you what the server GUI is and what it does just in a second. So let's launch our server again. And now it's loading all of the scripts on the server. And while that is being done, we can actually go into VS Code. So open up VS Code, and then you go into Open Folder. And you should have something like where you installed your server. So it's FX server, then TX data, and then what you called your server. I believe it was a beginner course, but you might have named it something else. Go into that, you should have the resources folder. Go into resources and press select folder. So now you have all of the resources or scripts opened in VS Code. So what we are going to do here in just a second is we're going to create our very first script. But first, let's have a look at the server console, and we see this. This means that the server is up and running. And as you see, this is just showing us a lot of information about that the different scripts have been loaded in and everything. So and the SVGUI is, give me a second guys, is basically the same thing. It looks like this. But here you also have a text field where you can write stuff. So you can restart scripts or actually start scripts. You can open the resource monitor for the server. It looks something like this, and see how the resource performance is doing for all of the scripts running on the server. So that's why we want the SVGUI, so we can actually run commands. So leave that open, and we'll start by creating a new folder right at the very root. So new folder, and I'm going to name this first script like this. And inside of this folder, we need to create a fx manifest file. So let's start off by doing that first. So we need fx manifest.lua. This is where we declare to the server that these are the files that you need to run. This is the game. These are the files that you need to run for having for using this script. And it always starts off with fx version, like this, and quotations, and it's going to be Cerulean as the latest fx version. And on the second row, which also always is required, is going to be game, and game is going to be GTA 5. And then you can have something like version 1.0, and you can have author like ML, and you could have something like description. This is my first script. And something else that we always use when we in the fx manifest is this command. It's called lua54. It means that, well, actually it's lua54 and then a yes in quotations. And this just tells the server that we are running Lua 5.4. So always use this one. And we also need to declare what files are inside of the script. So we are going to have a client script, which is going to be client.lua, like that, and a server script, which is going to be server.lua. So these two are the files that is going to run inside of this script. But we need to create these files. So go ahead and right click on the folder and go with new file. And this is supposed to be called client.lua. And we can do it one more time and do server.lua. So now we have created the script base. So now we need to start writing some code. And if we write the code on the client side, this code will only run on the client side. And if we write it in the server side, it will only run on the server side. So what we will do right now is we will start by writing on the server side, and we'll start by using a print statement just to see if this script is launching. So print is only sending commands, not commands, but texts and numbers and stuff like that to the output console. So we'll do this. This is my first script running server side, like that. And now we can go into our SV GUI, and then we can do a refresh, and then we can ensure this first script that we made. And nothing is happening. That's interesting. Oh, and this is why I've misspelled server. It's supposed to be server script. So let's try it again. First refresh, and then ensure it. And it's still not working. Yeah, it is working, sorry. This is my first script running server side. So this script sends this to the console by our print statement. So what can we do in here? Yeah, we are going to, first off, we're going to talk about variables. Variables is, you can see it, let's see how we explain this the easiest way. So if you've done math before, you know that variables are x, y, and z, and you calculate it with math. But when it comes to programming, variables is nothing like math variables. You can consider these variables being like boxes where you store information, okay? So let's do something like this. Variable 1 equals ml, which is my name, and we can create another variable called variable 2, which is going to be 5. So variable 1 is going to be ml, and variable 2 is going to be 5. And if we remove this one, this right here, and we'll go down here and we'll do a print again, and we want to print variable 1 and also variable 2. And then we open up the GUI again, and then we restart the first script, and now it sends ml and 5 into the console because we stored that data and then we printed that data. So there's a difference between these variables, and that is that this one is a string which contains text, and this is a integer. And there's also a third variable type that I'd like to talk about, variable 3, which is going to be look something like this. and this is going to be a float. So if we do, we also print the variable 3 like that, and then we restart it again, and now it prints 5.04. And if we do write type before and put the variables inside of brackets like this. Damn it, that's my bad. Type. And type on this one as well. Then we're going to print what kind of variable each of these are. So let's restart it and have a look. So the first one, Emil, is a string. Second one is a number, and third one is a number as well. And that's because in Lua you don't distinguish between integers and floats. They're all just called numbers. So let's do some mathematics, because that's something that we can do for in our scripts. That's something we are going to be using quite a lot. So we'll remove basically all of this, and we'll write a new. And I'll create a variable called name, which is going to be my name. So I'll call it Emil. And I'll create another variable called age, which is going to be my age, and I'm 32. And then we have a third variable, which is going to be called retirement age. And in Sweden, you go into retirement when you're 65 years old. So what we want to do here is we want to actually create a third variable, which is going to be called years left to retirement. And this one is going to be my actually the years that I need to reach minus my age, and then we get the difference of how many years it is left. So retirement age first, retirement age, which is 65, we declared it up here, and then minus my age, which is 32, so age, and then we can do something like print years left to retirement, like this, and restart it. And I have 33 years left till I go into retirement. But we can make this print look a bit nicer. So what we could do is we can make something like so we'll start the print with the name, which is Emil, and then we need to add all this stuff into this print, and we separate them by a comma. So Emil, and then we'll write a string. So let's delete this for now, and we'll write in a string has like that, and then years left to retirement, which is defined up here. But that's only going to return a number. So we'll write years left to retirement. I'll be right back, guys. Someone's knocking on the door. Okay, guys, sorry about that. Let's continue. So years left to retirement. And then we close the bracket, save it, and go back into the GUI. And let's restart our script and see what happens. Emil has 33 years left to retirement. Has been printed to the console. So guys, to wrap this up, I would like you guys to, using this that we have just learned, I want you to take the number. Let's see what the number is. So I want you to take the number 563,594, and I would like you to make it so this number gets printed in the console, but I want it to be printed with a $sign just before the number. And I would also like, if you can, try to make it so the second part of the number is getting a space between it. So you'll have the first three numbers, the space, and then the second three numbers. And try to keep the entire number in one variable. So that'll be the assignment for next week, and I will go through how to do it on the next episode. This will be it for today, guys. Have an awesome weekend. Nice seeing you. And remember, join my Discord. I have channels set up for talking about this developer course, and I would be really glad to talk to you guys who watched this, who learned something. If you have any questions, please ask them there. And as always, have an awesome weekend, and I'll see you next Friday.